What is up? What is up? What is up, ladies and gentlemen? This is the WrestleHavoc Podcast, Episode 1. It is Sunday, April 27th, 2025. We are coming off the heels of this past Sunday and Saturday's WrestleMania 41, which happened last weekend in Las Vegas. And man, this is the brand new WrestleHavoc Podcast. I want to thank you all for joining me on this edition of the show. Of course, we are on the WrestleHavoc YouTube channel on YouTube, and we are also on WNN Worldwide News Network. We're on their Facebook page and also their YouTube page. So we are doing a simulcast of sorts when it comes to this podcast. But if you guys are watching the podcast, thank you guys so much. We're going to be doing a lot of things. We're going to be talking professional wrestling right here on this podcast, and we got a lot to talk about, man. We're going to talk about WrestleMania. We're going to be talking about The Rock and his comments on the Pat McAfee Show and the backlash that a lot of fans had towards The Rock not showing up at WrestleMania 41 in the main event. Of course, we're also going to be talking about WWE acquiring Lucha Libre AAA and what this means for the future, considering WWE is looking for global expansion in the future. We're also going to be talking about Aleister Black and his return to the WWE this past Friday on SmackDown as well. But yeah, man, this is the WrestleHavoc Podcast. Dude, the preparation for this show was crazy, man. I was scrambling like all over the place. I was legitimately all over the place just trying to prepare myself for this show, doing the graphics, everything. But you know what? That's what we do here, man. We grind. That's what we do, and that's what makes this show possible is everybody is grinding. We're all over the place, and man, we made it. We're on the Worldwide News Network. We are on WNN. We are also on the WrestleHavoc YouTube channel. Of course, before we get into all this craziness regarding all this talk on professional wrestling, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the friggin' referee would say, ring, 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 ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, if you guys want more content like this, we are going to be live every Sunday at 8 p.m. right here on the WrestleHavoc YouTube channel, as well as WNN's Facebook page and WNN's YouTube channel as well. So we're going to be doing a lot of things when it comes to this podcast, so be on the lookout for that. But man, without any further ado, let's get on with the show. Of course, we can't talk about anything related to pro wrestling without talking about WrestleMania 41. WrestleMania 41 took place this past weekend. And man, a lot of individual critiques, with a lot of fans when it came towards night one of WrestleMania. But we're going to be doing a quick recap of WrestleMania 41. Overall, as a WrestleMania, I thought WrestleMania 41 was a great WrestleMania overall. And I'm talking about both nights of WrestleMania, because now WrestleMania is a two-night show, and it's been a two-night show since the year of 2020. But in terms of probably the best WrestleMania of all time, I'm going to be honest, this isn't up there as one of the best WrestleManias of all time, because I'm one of those people that genuinely believes that the build for this year's WrestleMania was just not that good. It was not the best build for a WrestleMania. But that is okay, because normally when a build for a show is not that great, 9 times out of 10, the show itself tends to deliver. And we see that all the time with AEW pay-per-views. AEW, of course, is WWE's competitor. But most of the time, when they build towards a pay-per-view, the pay-per-view build is just not the best. But whenever they hit to bell time on pay-per-view, man, they always knock it out of the park. And I thought Night 2 of WrestleMania was actually better than Night 1. I think we can all agree that Night 2 of WrestleMania was 10 times better than Night 1. But we're going to be doing a quick recap of WrestleMania 41. Of course, we had a couple matches on Night 1 of WrestleMania, of course. We had Rey Mysterio versus El Grande Americano, and the build for this match was a little bit entertaining, I'm not going to lie. Chad Gable is disguised as this luchador trying to discover the art of lucha libre, and he's disguised as El Grande Americano. But we actually didn't get Rey Mysterio versus El Grande Americano. Instead, Rey Mysterio actually got injured the night before on SmackDown, which was very unfortunate. And in his place was Rey Fenix. Of course, Rey Fenix recently made his debut with the WWE a couple weeks prior. And of course, Penta made his debut with the WWE this past January. And now we're going to be getting the Lucha Brothers, which honestly, if you guys haven't seen the Lucha Brothers are arguably one of the best tag teams in all of pro wrestling. And it's great that they're now a part of World Wrestling Entertainment. But man, when it comes to Rey Fenix and El Grande Americano, overall, man, the match, it was not bad. I mean, we saw El Grande Americano do things that, normally that Chad Gable would do. But when it comes to Rey Fenix, for those of you guys that don't know, Rey Fenix actually lost the match, and that was quite unfortunate. But really, the biggest shocker when it came to this match was El Hijo del Vikingo. If you guys don't know, El Hijo del Vikingo is one of the best luchadors out there. He is one of the best luchadors out there. I had the privilege of actually watching this guy live numerous times, not only at a GCW show in Atlantic City, but also at the Prudential Center in AEW because, of course, he did wrestle a couple of matches, not under contract with AEW, but he did wrestle a couple of matches in AEW. But El Hijo del Vikingo, seeing El Hijo del Vikingo on a WWE production was crazy. And, of course, that was coming off of the heels of the announcement that WWE acquired Lucha Libre AAA, which we will be talking about because there's a lot of talking points when it comes to that show, or that announcement, I should say. But overall, I thought the wrong man won. Rey Fenix losing was definitely the wrong decision to make. In my opinion, especially considering the fact that Rey Fenix just made his debut a couple weeks prior and now you're going to have him lose. To me, that was just kind of dumb, but it was what it was. We had Jade Cargill versus Naomi. Of course, that was a grudge match, considering Jade Cargill was attacked, and for months we did not know who that attacker was, and we found out at the Elimination Chamber when Jade Cargill made a return and attacked Naomi. The match was fine. I thought if there was anything good that I could say about this match, the number one thing that I could say about this match was the fact that Jade Cargill looked like $1 million. I thought Jade Cargill looked phenomenal in this match. And, a lot of people criticize Jade Cargill for her in-ring wrestling skills. And to me, I was not really one of those people, but you can tell she definitely put the work in terms of her training, and she looked amazing in this match against Naomi, and Naomi definitely made her look like $1 million. But nonetheless, we had Jade Cargill go over in the match, and it really was that. It was just a match, and my biggest issue with that particular match in terms of Jade Cargill and Naomi was, even though the match was built as something that was, it was like a blood feud between the two, Jade Cargill, of course, who thought that Naomi was a friend in storyline, blah, blah, blah. The match itself didn't really feel that way, and that was the biggest problem. But Jade Cargill ended up getting the win, and that was that. We had the War Raiders versus the New Day for the World Tag Team titles. Again, another match that I was just not really that excited about. If there was one criticism that I had about the first night of WrestleMania, it's the fact that the show itself felt flat in terms of the card. Because if you really think about it, the card itself was just not the best in terms of just night one. Because you had Rey Fenix versus El Grande Americano, Jade Cargill versus Naomi, the tag match, LA Knight versus Jacob Fatu, Tiffany Stratton versus Charlotte, Gunther versus Jey Uso, and Roman Reigns versus CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. Realistically, the only two matches that I was excited about were the main event matches. It was Gunther versus Jey Uso for the world title and the triple threat match that took place, which was fantastic and ultimately, in my opinion, saved the show. But we will talk about that later. But the New Day versus the War Raiders for the World Tag Team titles, the War Raiders haven't really done anything with those titles. The New Day had one of the best heel turns in modern history, and WWE did not follow up on their heel turn. And realistically, the New Day just didn't do anything at all, and that was the biggest problem with that. But with the War Raiders and the New Day, the right team won, and the New Day went over, and they're your new World Tag Team champions. A match that, again, I wasn't really that excited about, but nonetheless, it actually delivered. And it was actually a match that went straight to the point. It was all action from the start. From the moment the bell rang, it was just all action. It was LA Knight versus Jacob Fatu for the United States title. And I'm going to be honest, LA Knight hasn't reached the momentum that he had back in 2023. I think we can all agree. LA Knight is fantastic. If you guys don't know LA Knight, he's basically this Chad-like guy who is, basically a show-off and just loves, how do I say? He's very flamboyant, but that's what makes LA Knight really entertaining. LA Knight is one of the most entertaining acts on WWE TV, but if you guys don't know, back in 2023, this guy, his popularity just skyrocketed. And him going up against Jacob Fatu, of course, was a part of the New Bloodline. Jacob Fatu, man, ever since coming into the WWE last summer, he's done a lot, man. WWE's presented him like a freaking killer, and that is the number one take that I have when it comes towards Jacob Fatu. And the right man won. Jacob Fatu is the new U.S. champion. But again, this match was basically straight to the point, all action from the start, from the moment the bell rang. Jacob Fatu is your new U.S. champion. Next thing, we had Tiffany Stratton versus Charlotte Flair for the women's title. Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton. That is a very interesting match. The build for this match, I don't care what anybody says, was atrocious. I was one of those people that legitimately thought Charlotte winning the Royal Rumble was the right decision to make. But as we saw in this build, the build for this match was just horrible. And you can't look no further than the segment that they had on SmackDown a couple of weeks prior to WrestleMania, where basically Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte Flair went off script, and not in a good way. Because normally when people improvise, it ends up being good, but in this case, it looked horrible. Tiffany Stratton threw shade at Charlotte's real life divorce that actually took place, and then of course Charlotte Flair responded to Tiffany Stratton saying that Ludwig Kaiser, which is of course Tiffany Stratton's boyfriend, is in her DMs. So like they went off script, and you would think that would make that match more interesting. It would make this match more interesting, but if anything, it kind of backfired on WWE, and it just didn't look good, and a lot of fans pointed that out. And the match itself, looking back, was just not that great. It felt slow. The crowd felt dead. The crowd just did not seem too thrilled when it came to this match. But I will say, the right woman won, and Tiffany Stratton is still the women's champion, and that is fantastic because I always thought Tiffany Stratton was so good in the ring. She has such a great in-ring ability, and her potentially losing to Charlotte would be probably one of the biggest fumbles that WWE would possibly do. But thankfully, WWE did not do that, and they actually had Tiffany Stratton retained. So Tiffany Stratton is still your women's champion. Now, moving into the top two matches that people were looking forward to, and realistically the main event matches when it comes to WrestleMania, the main event matches. There's only one main event. Let's be realistic with ourselves. But since WrestleMania is 2 nights, there's realistically 2 main events. But whatever. That's another discussion for another time. So we had Gunther versus Jey Uso for the World Heavyweight title. Now, I said a lot about this match. I thought the match was great. A lot of people were against Jey Uso winning the Royal Rumble back in February. Everybody was not too thrilled about Jey Uso and him winning the Royal Rumble. I was one of those people that thought him winning the Rumble was a smart move, and him winning the Rumble was exactly what WWE needed to do. Because people need to understand that Jey Uso's popularity is not just amongst wrestling fans. His popularity can easily cross over to the mainstream. If you just look at his entrance alone, you can't tell me that is just not cool. That is 100% cool. Jey Uso is just the definition of marketability. That's Jey Uso. Jey Uso is marketable. And in terms of WWE, whenever they either create a star or want to present a star, they want to make sure that star is marketable, and that is what they see in Jey Uso. It doesn't really matter about your in-ring skills. Trust me, your in-ring skills matter. If you are a great wrestler, that is fantastic, and that is an important aspect of being a wrestler. But if you don't get your character down, if you don't have the right story to tell when you're in a match, then you're going to go nowhere. And Jey Uso, his involvement with the Bloodline throughout the past couple of years, of course, his involvement with Sami Zayn when he inserted himself into the Bloodline, made Jey Uso even way more interesting. And then once he broke away from the Bloodline and became legitimately main event Jey Uso, dude, the guy skyrocketed in popularity. If you don't believe me, look at his merch sales. Look at his merch sales. But Jey Uso is the man. And the build towards Jey and Gunther was a little interesting. And I say that because WWE was really just doing the same thing every single week. What do I mean by that? WWE basically had either Jey wrestle or Gunther wrestle, mostly Jey. And then after the match, Gunther would attack Jey and then both would brawl. That was basically the first few weeks of that build for Jey Uso versus Gunther. That is exactly what happened. But instead, once Jimmy, which is Jey's brother, got into the mix, that was when things started to get interesting, because then we had Jimmy Uso go wrestle Gunther on an episode of Raw. And then after the match, of course, Gunther just beat this guy to a bloody pulp. And Gunther was just, toying with Jimmy Uso right in front of Jey. And the involvement of Jimmy Uso into the storyline definitely made the build 10 times better, and it improved Jey Uso when it comes to his mic skills. Because let's be honest with ourselves, Jey Uso is just not the best when it comes to the microphone. But whenever it comes to whenever it deals with the serious storyline, that's when Jey Uso does his best work. And Jey Uso, the promos that he cut towards Gunther were fantastic. Fantastic stuff. Now, the match itself, we had Jey Uso versus Gunther for the world title. Now, this was another gripe that I had, and you could argue that this was the main gripe, but I have another gripe after that. The biggest problem that I had with this match was not even the match itself. The biggest problem that I had with Jey Uso versus Gunther was the fact that it opened WrestleMania. It opened WrestleMania. Now, for those that are non-wrestling fans, whenever a wrestler wins the Royal Rumble, which is the event that kicks off the road to WrestleMania, it normally takes place in January, but in this case, it took place in February of this year. That begins the road to WrestleMania. The Royal Rumble is a battle royal, which involves 30 wrestlers, and the objective is to throw everybody over the top rope. Jey Uso won the Royal Rumble, and whoever wins the Royal Rumble gains a main event spot at WrestleMania. WWE deliberately stated, Jey Uso is in the main event of WrestleMania. I have the philosophy that the main event of WrestleMania is the last match. I don't care what anybody says. WWE has created this mentality for like the past 20 years that there's like 5 main events in a WrestleMania. They can be the main matches, but they're not the actual main events. The actual main event is, number one, the match that people are paying to see. But more importantly, it is the last match on the card. The main event is the last match on the card. Now, you knew once Jey Uso won the Royal Rumble, he was not going to go after Cody Rhodes for the WWE title. 100% he was, because even though that sounds like a good match, Jey versus Cody sounds like a good match, but at the same time, if you compare it to the likes of a John Cena versus Cody Rhodes, it's not as big. And it's not really the best fitting for a WrestleMania main event. Let's be honest with ourselves. So for WWE to make Jey Uso win the Royal Rumble and deliberately say he is in the main event of WrestleMania, 100% false advertising, because this guy opened WrestleMania. I had a stream last weekend. I streamed my reactions for WrestleMania. And I remember stating and giving a whole list of times when Royal Rumble winners didn't main event WrestleMania. I can name off the top of my head guys that didn't main event WrestleMania. Off the top of my head. Let's see. Okay, WrestleMania 19, main evented. 20, main evented. 21, main evented. WrestleMania 22 back in 2006. Rey Mysterio won the 2006 Royal Rumble. He didn't main event WrestleMania, but he won his title, but he didn't main event WrestleMania. WrestleMania 23. Undertaker won the Royal Rumble back in 07. Did not main event WrestleMania. If anything, Batista and Undertaker back at WrestleMania 23 in Detroit was in the middle of the card. And the alleged story was that both men were pissed that they were in the middle of the card and they just wanted to steal the show. And they basically delivered one of the best matches of the night. Let's see. WrestleMania 24. John Cena. He didn't main event WrestleMania. He didn't close the show. WrestleMania 26. Edge won back in 2010. He didn't close the show. 27. This is when WWE started to basically make the winner of the Royal Rumble wrestle in the first match of WrestleMania. They had them open WrestleMania. Alberto Del Rio won the 2011 Royal Rumble and did not open or did not main event in the main event of WrestleMania. He opened WrestleMania. Sheamus won 2012. He opened WrestleMania. You know what I'm saying? John Cena won 2013. He actually main evented WrestleMania against The Rock. That was the last match. That was the main event. So what is the point that I'm trying to make here? The point that I'm trying to make here is that no matter who it is, whoever wins the Royal Rumble, you're not guaranteed a spot at WrestleMania. You're not guaranteed a main event spot at WrestleMania. I'm always at the belief that the main event spot is the last match. That is the match that everybody is paying to see. Let's be real with ourselves. That is a match that everybody's paying to see. Whoever wins the Royal Rumble year by year, the main event spot of WrestleMania is given to whoever WWE wants to main event WrestleMania. That is the whole point I'm trying to make. And they had Jey Uso versus Gunther open the show. That I had a problem with. But nonetheless, Jey Uso versus Gunther for the world title. It was a good match. It was a good match. But my next issue with the match was the finish of the match. The finish of the match involved Jey Uso applying a sleeper on Gunther and making Gunther tap out. They legitimately made Gunther tap out, which to me was the 100% the wrong move. If you really wanted to make Gunther look strong and not look like a chump, you could have had him at least apply the. You could have had at least had Jey Uso apply the sleeper on Gunther, and Gunther at least fade away, like go to sleep basically. You could have had Gunther pass out and then call it a day, and then Jey Uso would have won the world title. Or you could have gone the easy route and actually have Jey Uso pin Gunther. That's what I would have done. But making Gunther tap out, to me, the way that they had presented Gunther is not the type of guy that you would see tap out, especially to a guy like Jey Uso. But that's just me, though. That is just me. That's just me, though. That's just my opinion. I thought the finish of the match was the wrong way to go about things. But Jey Uso winning the World Heavyweight Championship was definitely the right move. My only issue was the way that WWE went about Jey Uso winning the World Heavyweight Championship. But that is just me. But moving on to the main event of night one of WrestleMania 41. Now, all of the matches that I stated were all the matches from night one of WrestleMania. They were all the matches from night one of WrestleMania. And night one, up to that point, was probably mostly, especially by me and a lot of other fans, considered a letdown. And we say that because of the fact that, number one, the card felt lackluster. A lot of the matches realistically just did not need to be involved in WrestleMania. And if you really think about it, if you really want to take it into consideration, this past Friday on SmackDown, there was a TLC match with the Street Profits, DIY, those guys, those tag teams. And it was probably highly considered, and I believe there's another team involved, I completely forgot. But it was highly considered one of the best matches in SmackDown history, one of the best matches on WWE TV. It was a triple threat TLC match. There we go. I actually haven't watched the show because I actually missed it. That is my fault. But we had, it was the Street Profits versus DIY, which is Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, taking on the Motor City Machine Guns, which is Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin. So they had a fantastic TLC match. I actually went back and watched some highlights of the match. And they announced the match on the SmackDown before WrestleMania. Think about this. They announced a TLC match between 3 tag teams for the tag team titles on the SmackDown before WrestleMania. And then you go back, you go to the next week, and you have these 3 teams deliver an absolute clinic. These guys killed each other in this match. And they went at it, and they went crazy. How come you not have this TLC match take place on night 1 of WrestleMania? Now, granted, the main event, the triple threat match between Roman, Punk, and Rollins, saved night 1, 100%, no doubt about it. But man, you could have at least replaced one match. If there was one match to replace, I would have probably replaced the War Raiders versus the New Day for the tag team titles. I love the New Day, but I mean, what have they done? I would have replaced that tag team title match with that TLC match that we saw this past Friday on SmackDown. We should have gotten that, the TLC match that we have gotten this past Friday on SmackDown, we should have gotten at WrestleMania. We should have gotten that match at WrestleMania. And for some reason, WWE decided not to do it. Why? I have no idea why. It was a stupid move on their end. But moving on, we had the main event of night 1. We had Roman Reigns versus CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. Now, the build for this match was centered around, of course, the wise man himself, Paul Heyman, or as I like to call him, because I'm an old school guy, Paul E. Dangerously. So it was centered around Paul Heyman, and of course, this past November, CM Punk teamed up with the Bloodline at War Games. And since CM Punk teamed up with the Bloodline in War Games at Survivor Series this past November, CM Punk tells Paul Heyman, I want a favor in return. And we didn't know what that favor was until a couple of weeks prior. And that favor was for Paul Heyman to pair up with CM Punk at WrestleMania in the triple threat match. Now, the build itself for the three-way at WrestleMania was fantastic. It all started back at the Royal Rumble, of course. All 3 men. If you guys didn't watch the Royal Rumble, bro, the Royal Rumble this past February, in my opinion, was one of the best Royal Rumbles I've ever seen. Because if you look at the lineup for that Royal Rumble, it was freaking stacked. It was like the talent on that 30-man Rumble was crazy. You had Punk, Cena, Roman, Rollins. The list goes on and on. Everybody was in that Rumble. Logan Paul was in that Rumble. Everybody that you could think of from a main event level was on that Royal Rumble match. And of course, it all led towards all 3 men getting eliminated. Seth Rollins snapping and then taking out Roman Reigns, hitting him with the curve stomp, and then him brawling with CM Punk. It was a crazy fiasco. But later on in the build of this match, it all centered around Paul Heyman. And going into this match, Paul Heyman came out with CM Punk. And we got to be honest with ourselves, man. The entrance. If there was any entrance, and look, the presentation for WrestleMania was just fantastic. Like the set, everything. If there's one thing that WWE does right, it is production. These guys understand production, especially ever since TKO took over, which of course TKO is the parent company of the UFC and of course now WWE. Ever since TKO took over, basically WWE has taken the UFC model. And if you watch the show, it has a sports-like presentation. And I love that about the WWE right now. They have a sports-like presentation, which I've always advocated for. I know a lot of fans hate the fact that there's sponsors in the ring, but I'm one of those people that 100% disagrees with the fans, because if you are a fan that dislikes logos on the ring canvas, you're clearly stuck in the past, because I was somebody that has advocated for that for years. How come you have promotions in the past like WCW add sponsors on their ring canvas? You also have companies now like New Japan. They always have sponsors on the ring canvas. Now you have AEW, which recently added their logo on the ring canvas, but when they started as a company, they did have the logos on the ring canvas. You know, everybody Every other promotion on the planet besides WWE did not have logos on the ring mat. How come WWE, is late to this ballgame? But thankfully now, they have logos on the ring canvas. A lot of fans don't like that. I don't know why. It's a dumb argument to make. In my opinion, it makes the show feel like a sport. I mean, granted, whatever you want to believe, to me, I view pro wrestling as a mixture of a sport and a mixture of theater. We all know it's predetermined, but, the wrestlers that are in the ring working together, they are athletes. So it is a sport mixed in with theater-like presentation, but it has a sports-like presentation overall if you watch the product. And that is exactly what I love about the WWE product. But nonetheless, man, WrestleMania as a whole, from a presentation standpoint, was just beautiful. Allegiant Stadium, the stage, everything about it was just fantastic. But when it comes to CM Punk, I thought CM Punk had the best entrance for WrestleMania. He had the best entrance. They had a video package showcasing his entire history in the WWE, dating back to his days in OVW, which was the developmental system of WWE at the time. And it had his old theme song play, This Fire Burns, by the band Killswitch Engage, which was freaking awesome. But when it came to CM Punk's entrance, they had Live in Color, which does the song Cult of Personality. They had Live in Color played live, and CM Punk came out with Paul Heyman. Dude, I felt like a little kid again. But they came out, and the match went underway. And the match itself was fantastic. Of course, again, the story was basically revolving around Paul Heyman. And in the weeks leading up, we had Seth Rollins tell Paul Heyman, you also owe me a favor. We did not know what that favor was. But man, Paul Heyman in this match was probably the highlight, because the facial expressions that Paul Heyman had during this match, oh my God, bro, don't even get me started. But man, Roman looked great. Punk looked great. Rollins looked great as well. You can tell all three men wanted to make this match fantastic, because they probably were looking on Twitter and they were like, oh yeah, man, a lot of people are not liking tonight's WrestleMania, man. Let's kill it, and let's give the fans the best match they could possibly see. And that is exactly what we got. And man, when it came to this match, man, dude, the ending. Now, I came into this match knowing that Paul Heyman was going to turn on both men. You may call me a smart mark, and for all you non-wrestling fans out there, a smart mark is, I don't want to say a derogatory term that a lot of wrestlers used back in the day towards fans, but it's basically you're a fan that knows everything. You read the dirt sheets, everything. Yes, I'm a smart mark, and I don't care. But that ending when it came to Paul Heyman, this is what happens. Paul Heyman grabs the chair. He grabs the chair, and he has the choice whether to give the chair to CM Punk, or he has a choice to give the chair to Roman Reigns. And what happens is that he gives the chair to CM Punk. And the look on Roman Reigns' face, he's like, bro, did you just betray me? Did you really just betray me? And what happened after that was that Paul Heyman goes in the ring, CM Punk stands up with the chair in hand, and he's about to hit Roman with the chair, but instead, Paul Heyman goes under and low blows CM Punk. And then the look on Roman Reigns' face went from completely sad/angry to, that's my wise man. That's my wise man right there. And what happened after that, Roman grabbed the chair, and he just hits CM Punk repeatedly with the chair. Meanwhile, Seth Rollins is right across from Roman Reigns in the ring. And Paul Heyman, being the wise man that he is, tells Roman Reigns, my tribal chief, look, Seth Rollins is right over there. And the moment when he pointed towards Seth Rollins, I knew they were going to go with that angle. And what happened? Roman turns around towards Seth Rollins, and he wanted to just hit Seth Rollins with that chair the way he did last year at WrestleMania 40. And what happened? Paul Heyman does the exact same thing. The exact same thing. He does the exact same thing towards Roman Reigns. And what happens after that? The look on Seth Rollins' face. Seth Rollins grabs the chair, hits Roman with the chair, curve stomp. He does his shtick. And what happens? Seth Rollins gets the win. And Seth Rollins is officially a Paul Heyman guy. He's officially a Paul Heyman guy. And man, I got to be honest, man. That was one of the best angles that WWE has done. One of the best angles that WWE has done, in my opinion. Because to me, everybody knew that Seth Rollins was eventually going to turn. He was eventually going to turn heel on. He was eventually going to turn heel on both men. Seth Rollins was going to join Paul Heyman whether you liked it or not. But the way that they went about it was just so creative. And Paul Heyman is like a modern day Bobby Heenan. And I love Bobby Heenan, God rest his soul, but man, Paul Heyman is the man. The guy's an inspiration. And if you watched his interview on the Pat McAfee Show, this guy went nuts. This guy went like nuts. He went balls to the wall. This guy insulted everybody that stood next to him, including Michael Cole, and said things that felt like they were taboo. It was crazy. It was freaking crazy. And then now we have Paul Heyman join up with Seth Rollins. And then the next night, who else joins Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins' entourage? It's Braun Breaker. Of course, I like to call him a Steiner because he is a Steiner. But Braun Breaker now joins up with Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins. And a lot of people are asking themselves, who's going to be a part of this new group? Who else is going to be a part of this new group? Is it going to be a guy like maybe Carmelo Hayes? Is it going to be a guy like Austin Theory? Who knows? Who else is going to join up? Because I do believe that there's going to be one other member of that group. And everybody is asking, what is the name of this faction going to be? What is the name of this faction going to be? Is it going to be Evolution 2.0? And I tell these people, why are you going to call it Evolution 2.0? Triple H is not even involved at all. And you're going to call it Evolution 2.0? It makes no sense whatsoever. If anything, if you want to add 2.0, I would call it the Dangerous Alliance. If you guys don't know, if you guys know your wrestling history, Paul Heyman in the 90s back in WCW, this was before ECW, by the way. This was the early 90s. Before ECW, before he came along and ECW was still Eastern Championship Wrestling, and Paul Heyman joined up with Todd Gordon and he helped run ECW. Before all of that, Paul Heyman was in WCW as a manager with this group called the Dangerous Alliance. What if this new group is going to be called the Dangerous Alliance 2.0? It's just a thought. I may be totally wrong with this, but what if that is the case? What if this new group is called the Dangerous Alliance 2.0? We're going to have to wait and see, but it's very interesting. But nonetheless, man, this whole match was one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best WrestleMania main events in recent memory. I don't care what anybody says. This is one of the best. Moving on to night 2 of WrestleMania. Night 2 of WrestleMania, in my opinion, was 100% the better night. If you compare both nights of WrestleMania, night 2 of WrestleMania clears night 1. And it's not even close. It clears night 1. But the matches that we had on this card were AJ Styles versus Logan Paul, Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre in a Sin City street fight, Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez versus Bayley and Lyra Valkyria, Braun Breaker versus Penta versus Finn Balor versus Dominic Mysterio for the IC title, a.k.a. the Intercontinental Championship. Io Sky versus Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship. And, of course, the main event, which was John Cena versus Cody Rhodes for the undisputed WWE title, which, of course, ended in controversial fashion and had a lot, and I mean a lot of fan backlash. But we will talk about that later on because it bleeds in to our main topic, which is, of course, the power struggle going on in World Wrestling Entertainment between The Rock and Triple H. We will get to that later on. But before we get to recapping Night 2 of WrestleMania 41, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. The WrestleHavoc Podcast, of course, is available on the WrestleHavoc channel on YouTube, but it's also available on WNN Worldwide News Network on their Facebook page and also on their YouTube page. So if you guys want to check out all that content, check it out on not only WrestleHavoc, but also WNN. If you guys want to check out other content besides the WrestleHavoc Podcast, also check out the WrestleHavoc channel as well. The link will be in the description below. But moving on to Night 2 of WrestleMania 41. Again, the card for Night 2, in my opinion, was 10 times better than the card of Night 1. But if there's one thing that I could say about WrestleMania 41 as a whole, is that Night 1 and Night 2 were very different. And what do I mean by that? They were very different in a sense of Night 1 had the worst card. Like, if you compare Night 1 and Night 2, Night 1 had the weaker card, 100%. Night 1 had the weaker card, but the main event was just fantastic. And it ultimately saved the show. But then, if you look at Night 2 of WrestleMania, and you looked at the card as a whole, the whole entire undercard was fantastic. And the crowd was highly enthusiastic. They were more active on Night 2 of WrestleMania than they were on Night 1. Now, according to Brian Alvarez, because I do love listening to the guys at The Observer. I know the guys at The Observer got a lot of flack. But I believe Brian Alvarez was at both nights of WrestleMania at Allegiant Stadium. He stated that the crowd in Night 1 was exactly the same as Night 2. But if you watch the feed on Peacock or internationally on Netflix, there was some probably issue with the microphone that you didn't really hear the crowd as much on the first night of WrestleMania than you did the second. But the crowd was more highly enthusiastic on Night 2 than they were on Night 1. That is just from my perspective. But when it came to Night 2 had the better undercard, but they had the weaker main event. That is the crazy thing. Night 1, think about this. Night 1 had the weaker undercard, but the stronger main event. And Night 2 of WrestleMania had the stronger undercard and the weaker main event. Think about those parallels, by the way. Think about those parallels. It's very interesting. But let's do a quick rundown of Night 2 of WrestleMania. We're going to kick off with the opening match, that being Io Sky versus Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship. Overall, I thought the match was fantastic. I actually picked Rhea Ripley to go over in this match, but clearly I was wrong. Again, it was straight up action from the moment the bell rang. Each woman had a chance to showcase their abilities in this three-way match, and that's what I really loved about this match. And Io Sky, man, she looked like a star, and that finish literally had the entire crowd just stand up. It was crazy. But Io Sky won the match and retained her Women's World Championship, which was 100% surprising in my opinion. I actually thought Rhea Ripley was actually going to win the match and go over and win back her women's title, but clearly that was not the case. So it didn't happen. Moving on. AJ Styles versus Logan Paul. A really weak match, I'm going to be honest. I 100% respect Logan Paul's commitment and his ability in the ring. I know a lot of people do not like Logan Paul, and if you do not like Logan Paul, you have the right to your opinion, because Logan Paul and his brother Jake do a lot of crazy things. And a lot of crazy things, or I should say those crazy things, are not that popular. Not that popular, and it garners a lot of hate. Not to mention, if you look at his brother Jake, he fights retired boxers or retired fighters in these boxing matches that clearly garner attention, and it's clearly for a quick cash grab. But that is just me. If you don't believe me, check out the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight. You'll know what I'm talking about. But then again, AJ Styles, he's in the near end of his career. Of course, I assume he's going to have a couple of years left in him. But there was a lot of talk about his contract status. We do not know his contract status as of right now. But clearly, they're not doing a lot with AJ Styles at the moment. And they were like, you know what, let's put AJ Styles on the card. So let's give him to Logan Paul. Overall, what are my thoughts on this match? I'm going to be honest, it was just a match. It just felt like a match to me. The build was not really the best. To me, it was just there. They just had promo segments, and that was it. But realistically, I'm going to be honest, man, this match kind of fell flat. And to be fair, the crowd was just not that thrilled to watch this match whatsoever. And Logan Paul, of course, ended up going over in this match. All right, moving on. All right, hold on. All right, moving on in this match, or in this show, I should say. We had Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre in the Sin City Street Fight. Overall, I thought the build for this match was great. The build for Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest, I mean, you can tell WWE definitely put their best foot forward when it came to this match. But I will say, the match itself, I mean, you're calling it a Sin City Street Fight. I don't know about you, but a Sin City Street Fight needs to be a little more hardcore than what we got. So to me, it just didn't live up to that expectation. But it is what it is. That's just me. It is what it is. But not only that, when it came to this match, we had tables involved, we had chairs involved. The normal shtick. If there's one thing that I probably would have done in this match is, if you're going to call it a Sin City Street Fight, have the guys fight all over the arena. Just have them fight all over the arena, because if you don't have them fight all over the arena, what is the point? You know what I'm saying? What is the point? But to me, overall, the match was fine. It was not really the best, but it got the job done in terms of, what they had and the time that they had. But in the end, of course, one guy went over and one guy lost. And it is what it is. And that guy that went over was Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre was the guy that went over in the match. And honestly, I would have done the same thing, because let's be real. When they announced this match between Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre, a lot of people were not that thrilled, considering Drew McIntyre. Think about this. Drew McIntyre had a great year-long feud with CM Punk last year, and it culminated into their Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood, which honestly was fantastic. An amazing match. Let's be real with ourselves. It was a fantastic match. But then after that, realistically, what was Drew McIntyre doing? They needed to have Drew McIntyre do something for WrestleMania. In WWE's mind, they were like, you know what? Let's have them wrestle Damian. No shade on Damian Priest, by the way. No shade on Damian Priest. But they were like, you know what? Let's give him Damian Priest, and we'll call it a day. But hopefully WWE does something with Drew McIntyre further on down the line in the future. But we're going to have to wait and see what goes down. All right. Moving on. Here is one match that, again, just I did not care about. And honestly, everything that went down in this match completely just fell flat, especially if you watched Raw the next night. Now, the original lineup for this match was supposed to be Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez defending their tag team titles against Bayley and Lyra Valkyria. But they shot an angle in which Bayley got attacked and she was unable to compete. But I believe in real life, Bayley was fine. Like Bayley was not injured at all. So who was Lyra Valkyria's partner? Lyra Valkyria's partner ended up being Becky Lynch, a returning Becky Lynch. And the crowd went ballistic for Becky Lynch. Everybody went crazy for Becky Lynch. And they ended up winning the women's tag team titles. But I'm one of those people that I always stated. I always thought that this made sense. WWE, ever since debuting the women's tag team titles back in 2019, WWE did absolutely nothing with those titles. Absolutely nothing. They did not make them feel important. A lot of the tag teams were not even real tag teams that were holding those titles. Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, whenever WWE would have a tag team hold those women's tag team titles, most of the time, not all the time, most. That's the key word, because I don't want people to take me out of context. Most of the time, it was a makeshift tag team. A makeshift tag team, if you guys do not know, is where you take one random wrestler and another random wrestler, and you just pair them up. Boom, you got a tag team. To me, that's not a real tag team. You know, a real tag team is Kaden Carter and Katana Chance. They were always paired together. Kaden Carter and Katana Chance, that's a real tag team. But aside from that, I mean, when it comes to Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, you can call them a tag team considering they're a part of the same group. But it is what it is. But most of the time, those titles just did not mean anything. And they still don't mean anything. And the same thing goes for the Women's Intercontinental title and the Women's United States Championship. When was the last time we heard of Chelsea Green? Because I can't remember. I cannot remember at all. When was the last time we heard of Chelsea Green? Who, by the way, won the Women's United States Championship, I believe, on the first Saturday night's main event on NBC this past December. When was it? Maybe she made appearances on TV, but if she had made an appearance on TV, I'd probably forget, but it was not in, it was not in an important role. You know what I'm saying? Lyra Valkyria won she is the first women's intercontinental champion. And what has she done? She has done absolutely nothing. Nothing. Nada with that women's intercontinental championship. If you compare the women's intercontinental championship to the men's intercontinental championship, it's like night and day. The men's intercontinental championship is way more important than the women's intercontinental championship. Why isn't WWE putting enough focus on the women's intercontinental championship and the women's U.S. title? I think that's a discussion that we all need to talk about. WWE really needs to put more focus on them. Because then I ask myself, why did you guys introduce this title if you guys are not even going to do anything with this title? Like, think about this. Lyra Valkyria is in this tag team match. She should have been in a match. She should have been in a one-on-one match defending her title. Instead, they put her in a tag team match. And build up on a Becky Lynch return, which is exactly what we got. And then they had them win. Think about this. They had them win the women's tag team championships, only for them to drop it back to Liv Morgan and Raquel the next night on Raw and have Becky turn heel. Don't you think it would have made a little more sense for, hey, let's have Lyra and Becky lose, maybe in the same fashion as they did on this past Monday's Raw, and then you have Becky turn heel at WrestleMania, but no, instead they did it on Raw. Why would you have Liv and Raquel drop their titles only to win them back the next night? That made no sense whatsoever. I'm sorry. That made no sense at all. None. Made no sense. But yeah, Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez versus Bayley and Lyra Valkyria. Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez versus Bayley and Lyra Valkyria just made no sense. Nobody cared about that match. I'm sorry. Here's one match that I loved. Braun Breaker versus Penta versus Finn Balor versus Dominic Mysterio for the Intercontinental Championship. That match was off the chain. Off the chain. 100%. That match was fantastic. Simply because of the interactions between Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio. Finn Balor and Dominic they have great chemistry with one another. And I assume the upcoming feud that we're probably going to be getting into the summer, going into SummerSlam, is going to be between Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio. Guys, the finish between Dominic Mysterio, Finn Balor, Penta, and Braun Breaker was an all-timer. I don't care what anybody says. But let's talk about the match, man. Penta, of course, is great at what he does. Let's talk about Braun Breaker for a second. Braun Breaker, and of course, now he's joined up with Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman. It raises his stock even more. But Braun Breaker before that, dude, Braun Breaker was killing it. I've always made the assumption that Braun Breaker had the best spear in the business. And I don't care what anybody says, I still believe it. Braun Breaker, I don't care what anybody says, has the best spear in the business. That honor used to go to Ricky Starks, a.k.a. Ricky Saints, now in NXT. He had the best spear at the time. But now Braun Breaker, dude, this guy is the man. This guy is the man when it comes to the spear and his in-ring ability. But he lost. He lost the Intercontinental Championship, but the good thing about his loss was that he didn't get pinned. If he had gotten pinned, I would have been a little upset. But they didn't do that. The finish, though, was freaking creative, and I loved it. The finish of this match was basically Finn Balor went for the coup de grace. He went for the coup de grace. I believe it was on, he was either on Braun or Penta. I can't recall. But Finn Balor went for his finishing move, the coup de grace, which is basically him going to the top rope and hitting a double stomp off the top rope. Jumping off the top rope and hitting a double stomp. He hits the coup de grace. And you guys can see my reaction on social media. My reaction was priceless. I went crazy. He went for the coup de grace. Think about this. He went for the coup de grace, and Dominic on the other turnbuckle from behind jumps off the top rope and hits the frog splash right when Finn Balor was about to go for the pin. He hits the frog splash right when Finn Balor was about to go for the pin on the back of Finn Balor. He hits the frog splash. What happens? What in the world happens? You know what happens? This guy goes for the cover after hitting the frog splash. 1, 2, 3. The crowd goes crazy. Dominic Mysterio is your Intercontinental Champion. Bro. That was one of the best finishes to any match that I've seen. Not even just on a WrestleMania, on any given card. It could have been on a Raw, and I would have been like, that finish was fantastic. That finish was awesome. It could have been on a Raw, and I still would have said the same thing. But Dominic winning his Intercontinental Championship, bro, this is not his first championship. Of course, his first championship was him winning the tag team titles with his father, Rey Mysterio. But this is his first singles title. And I'm going to be real. Dude, Dominic 100% deserves it. Because if you really compare where Dominic was at the start of his in-ring wrestling career in the WWE, his first match in the WWE was during the pandemic against Seth Rollins at SummerSlam back in 2020. And then, of course, later on, he was a tag team with his dad, Rey Mysterio. And to me, in my opinion, I was one of those people that thought, you know what, man, it would have been so much better if Dominic was solo, if Dominic was on his own down at NXT. He would have done great down in NXT. But looking back now to where Dominic is right now, him tag teaming with his father was probably the best decision that WWE could have made for Dominic. Because look at what we saw after that. He was a tag team with his father for like a year and a half. And he was kind of in the shadow of Rey Mysterio for a little bit. He was in the shadow of Rey Mysterio for a little bit. And what happened? What happened after that? Clash at the Castle back in 2022. He turns on Edge and he turns on Rey Mysterio and he joins the Judgment Day. And him joining the Judgment Day was the best move of Dominic's career. And look where he is now. Dude, this guy went from being one of the biggest heels, not only in the WWE, he went from being one of the biggest heels in the business to being one of the biggest heels he went from being one of the biggest heels in WWE and in the entire business to being one of the biggest baby faces in all of pro wrestling. The crowd reaction when he won that Intercontinental Championship was priceless. Priceless. It was insane. I went crazy too. But Dominic winning the IC title, man, the crowd reaction was insane, and he's going to be on the run of his lifetime. Bro, the Intercontinental Championship is not even a world championship. It is only a mid-card championship. But it should be a mid-card championship that should be treated with honor and, with respect. Like, the IC title has a lot of history behind it. And now that it's in the hands of Dominic, dude, I'm not going to lie, man. I'm very curious to see what Dominic is going to be doing with that Intercontinental Championship. I am very curious to see what's going to happen. And I'm very excited, man. Clearly, after he pinned Finn Balor, we're going to be seeing a feud between both Dominic and Finn Balor for the Intercontinental Championship coming into the summer. That 100%, I don't care what anybody says, we are going to be getting Finn Balor versus Dominic Mysterio at SummerSlam here in the great state of New Jersey. I will be the first one to call it. And then I will come on this show and I will say, I told you so. Did you see that rhyme, by the way? Did you guys see that rhyme? All right, moving on to the main event, the creme de la creme. The main event, man. The main event. Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes versus John Cena for the undisputed WWE Championship. What can I say? What can I say about this whole match? I'm not going to be one of those people. Think about this. I'm not going to be one of those people that are going to immediately point the blame at Cody Rhodes or John Cena or Triple H or anybody and just immediately crap on the match. I'm not going to be one of those people. I'm not. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to be one of those people. But I will say, if you compare this main event to the night one main event, I think it's obvious which was the better main event. The night one main event was 10 times better than the main event of night two. I had no problem with the finish of John Cena going over. I had no problem with John Cena going over. If you are upset about John Cena going over, clearly you are the problem. Because I think John Cena going over was probably the plan all along. I think WWE, regardless of all the fiasco involving The Rock, all that stuff, I think WWE wanted to give John Cena his 17th World Championship. And rightfully so. I would have given him his 17th World Championship anyway. The whole Travis Scott thing. How do I put to words this match as a whole? The number one problem with this main event was the fact that The Rock was not there. That was the biggest problem with this whole match. The Rock did not show up. I think what we saw in the main event between Cody Rhodes and John Cena was a situation in which Triple H's hands were tied and he needed to work around The Rock not being there, basically sabotaging the entire main event of WrestleMania. What do I mean by sabotaging the entire main event of WrestleMania? Well, this isn't the first time he tried to put his greasy little paws on ongoing plans that Triple H had in motion for the past few months. Triple H clearly, I assume, wanted to do John Cena versus Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. That's what I see happening. But with the match itself, people need to understand John Cena, of course, is in his last year. Give him his slack. He's going to be a little slow. I think Cody Rhodes did exactly what he needed to do. I don't think the match itself was like bad. Because look, there are times where matches can be like really bad. I mean, if you compare this to like what we saw at like AEW Revolution, the match between Adam Copeland and Jon Moxley was just atrocious. Absolutely horrible. That was bad. That was a bad match. The match itself was not bad. My biggest issue was two things. The Rock not showing up and them making Cody Rhodes look like a chump. They 100% made Cody Rhodes look stupid in this match. What do I mean by that? Well, remember that part during the match where Cody Rhodes has the belt. He has the belt in his hands, and he has the opportunity to hit John Cena with the title. Keep in mind, this is the same guy, John Cena, that low-blowed Cody Rhodes. He low-blows Cody Rhodes after hugging him. And then the three men, The Rock, John Cena, and Travis Scott, all three men brutally beat this man down to a bloody pulp. That was the ending sight of Elimination Chamber in Toronto. That was the ending sight. And you have Cody Rhodes in this match. You have Cody Rhodes in this match holding the belt, having the best opportunity that he can. And there's no referee over there. No referee. He could easily hit this man with the belt. Is like, I can't do it because I have too much respect for John Cena. Almost on the verge of tears. And he drops the belt only for John Cena to take advantage of the whole situation. I'm sorry, but to me, that was the stupidest thing that WWE did. 100% stupid. If you're a babyface like Cody Rhodes and you have the title in your hand, I don't care if you're a babyface or a heel, you have every chance to hit John Cena. Because this is the guy that turned his back on you. Of course you're going to hit him with the belt. Why are you going to drop it? Because, I have too much... Who cares? Who cares? They made Cody Rhodes look so bad in that situation. I'm sorry. They made Cody Rhodes look horrible in that match. But John Cena winning his 17th World Championship, I have no problem with it. But was the match good? It was not. If you just critique it from just a match standpoint, is it going to be one of the best WrestleMania main events? No, it's not. And look, this is not me defending the BS. Because if you watch my live stream, I was just doing live reactions. I marked out for John Cena. Hell, I even marked out for Travis Scott. I'm not going to lie. I'm probably in the minority, but Feena's a good song. Okay? I be blasting that on the radio. But how do I put it into words so people won't take me out of context? My issue was not the match. My issue was the way we got there. That was my issue. The Rock not showing up was my biggest issue. Them making Cody Rhodes look horrible was my issue. That was my biggest gripe. And it was even more justified when The Rock went on the Pat McAfee Show. Because when he went on the Pat McAfee Show, dude, this guy laid it all out. And we will get into that. We are going to get into that. But before we get into all the craziness, because The Rock and Triple H, The Rock primarily is going to be our main story. Before we get into all this craziness, if you guys are joining me right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, the new WrestleHavoc Podcast, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. All right. Now let's move on to The Rock's interview on the Pat McAfee Show. So, The Rock didn't show up on the Pat McAfee Show, and everybody was upset. Why wasn't The Rock there? We got no explanation. I was one of those people too. And I'm still one of those people. Why did we not get an explanation as to why John Cena primarily turned heel and joined The Rock? Because that was the biggest story. John Cena is a heel. Yeah, he turned heel. But more importantly, he joined The Rock. You know, Cody, he asked for Cody's soul. And Cody was like, go F yourself. That is exactly, in the words of Cody Rhodes, go F yourself. That is exactly what Cody Rhodes stated. And then John Cena was the guy that The Rock took the soul from. He took John Cena's soul. So The Rock goes on the Pat McAfee Show. And as a lot of people, a lot of podcasters and content creators alike, stated that this was damage control. And no, I'm not talking about Bayley or Io Sky or Dakota Kai. I'm not talking about that damage control. This was legitimate damage control. So one of the things that The Rock pointed out in this interview was the appearance at the Elimination Chamber. And The Rock specifically stated that Ari Emanuel, now think about this, Ari Emanuel, who is the head of Endeavor, a.k.a. TKO, which owns the WWE and the UFC. If you guys do not know, the WWE and the UFC are under one umbrella. Ari Emanuel contacted The Rock, and The Rock stated this on the Pat McAfee Show. He contacted The Rock, and he stated, can we have The Rock show up at the Elimination Chamber because tickets are running a little slow. Now, that's my number one issue right there. Tickets are running slow. Now, this was not a situation like, tickets were running horribly. Like, tickets were not selling horribly, but it wasn't like a sellout. Like, they needed to sell a couple thousand more tickets, and that was it. It was not a situation in which they didn't sell any tickets at all, and they needed, a guy like The Rock to show up. No, like, they could have been fine, but, the tickets were not horrible, but they were not great. But the reason behind tickets running slow, so first off, this was not even the plan all along. The Rock showing up at the Elimination Chamber was not even in the books. It was not even in the books, because if you guys remember, when The Rock announced that he was going to show up on that SmackDown a couple weeks before the Elimination Chamber, everybody went crazy. But apparently the reason as to why The Rock was on the Elimination Chamber PLE was because of the fact that Ari Emanuel was like, can you come show up at the Elimination Chamber because tickets are running slow. You don't say. Tickets are selling a little slow. They're a little slumpy. I wonder why. I wonder why. And this is another rant that it's not even a rant, but this is another thing that I'm going to point out. Have you seen the prices? If you want to go to a WWE event, these ticket prices are ridiculous. Ridiculous. You want to know why these ticket sales are starting to move a little slower? Even though WWE is still relatively hot, they're moving a little slow. It's because the ticket prices are ridiculously expensive. You are outpricing your fan base. The UFC does the same thing. I understand if a product is hot. And you want to bump up the price. Business 101. But if you do it for every single event, including TV, it is ridiculous. It's not even just a TKO issue. It's not even a TKO issue. This is a Ticketmaster issue. Because if you buy a ticket via Ticketmaster, dude, the fees are ridiculous. The amount of fees, if you buy a ticket via Ticketmaster, are ridiculous. But the prices... if you bought a ticket at WrestleMania at the highest of levels, bro, I assume the price for one of the higher level seats would have probably been around the $500, $600 range, which is still actively just pure ridiculousness. It's stupid. You're paying that amount of money to pay for a higher level seat when you know damn well the economy is not doing great right now. Inflation is still running rampant. And you have families that want to take their families to WrestleMania. Meanwhile, each seat is like $200, not even $200. Bro, for a higher level seat, $200 or less than $200 is not bad. But if you're pricing them $300, $400, $500, even $600, probably almost $700 for a higher level seat for each person, especially if you want to bring in a family, dude, you're having people to break the bank. I'm sorry. People are going to go broke with that. These prices are atrocious. Atrocious. So WWE really needs to figure out something with these prices. Not even just ticket prices, bro. Like meet and greets. Like, have you seen these prices for the Hall of Fame meet and greets? They're ranging around $2,000 to $3,000 to meet up and have a photo with the podium with Triple H, Michelle McCool. Like $3,000, $4,000. Like it's whoa. Who is paying that amount of money for a meet and greet? I don't know, man. I don't know. But these WWE raising the prices of these tickets are I think, is one of the main reasons as to why tickets are starting to move a little slower than normal. Because WWE, man, be selling out everywhere. And they still do. They relatively sell out everywhere. For TV, for event, they sell out. But in terms of WrestleMania and Elimination Chamber, they were selling a little bit slower. I wonder why. Not to mention, WrestleMania is in Vegas. Dude, Vegas is ridiculously expensive regardless. Nobody's going to pay that amount of money to go watch wrestling. I'm sorry. I know I wouldn't. As much as I would love to go, dude, you're not going to have me paying $3,000 for just one night. That's not even including the hotels, the restaurants. It's not even including that, man. Front row seats are like $5,000, probably more. That's just me doing numbers off the top of my head. But, dude, some of these prices that I looked online are just insanity. And that is not even including the fees on Ticketmaster. But you want to know why tickets are going a little slower? It's because you're raising the prices. This is not a WWE problem. This is a TKO problem. TKO is doing this type of stuff. They're charging fans ridiculous amounts of dollars to pay for these events. It's ridiculous. Insane. But Ari Emanuel wanted The Rock to show up at WrestleMania 41. Or not at WrestleMania 41, at the Elimination Chamber. So in a quote by The Rock stated, and I quote, "I did feel, and I made the call, I don't want to be involved in that. Let the final boss step back into the shadows. Let all the spotlight go to John Cena and Cody Rhodes. Let's not make it about Cody's soul or John's soul." Huh? Let them do what they want to do, he claimed, despite a very clear creative decision to make it about Rhodes selling his soul and being front and center alongside John Cena after a buzzworthy heel turn 2 decades in the making. And I'm reading this off the Bleacher Report website. So originally, if you guys don't know, the original plan was supposed to be for Cody Rhodes, and I don't care what anybody says, this was the original plan. This was the original plan, and Dave Meltzer stated it. And Dave Meltzer gets a lot of flack. On my end, too, because Dave Meltzer has been getting a lot of things wrong. But in this case, Dave Meltzer was in the right. Dave Meltzer deliberately stated months ago that the plan was for Cody Rhodes to turn heel and join The Rock. And that was an idea of The Rock. And The Rock literally blasted Meltzer, and says, "You don't know anything, blah, blah, blah." He blasted Dave Meltzer from his reporting. Don't believe these dirt sheets. Don't believe none of these people. Meanwhile, you have The Rock coming in here and saying that, oh yeah, the original plan was probably for, Cody Rhodes to sell his soul to The Rock. You know damn well, The Rock wanted Cody Rhodes to turn heel. Which, by the way, is the stupidest move to make. The Rock wanted Cody Rhodes to turn heel. That is what he wanted. I'm sorry, but that is one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard in my life. Why do you want to turn your biggest babyface, your biggest draw that you have, heel in the middle of his babyface run? Why do you want to turn him heel? It makes no sense whatsoever. It doesn't. It makes no sense at all. Why do you want to turn Cody heel? So then Triple H came up with the idea of, hey, let's have John Cena turn heel. And The Rock was like, oh yeah, it's great. Let's have John Cena turn heel. So moving on, some of the notes that I got over here. So Ari Emanuel called The Rock to show up at the Elimination Chamber. He wanted initially for Cody Rhodes to turn heel, which is dumb. It's a dumb move in my opinion. Triple H decided to go with John Cena instead, and The Rock agreed. And then, of course, and I'm reading this from a Reddit post, he literally recapped the whole thing, and I did watch the interview as well. The Rock understood that when people saw Travis Scott and they thought he was going to come out, he said that he would have adjusted or finessed things a little more. That is what he said on the Pat McAfee Show. So this is another problem that I have right here. The Rock specifically stated he understood that if Travis Scott came out, he knew that fans were going to think that he was going to show up. He knew that fans were going to think that he was going to show up, that The Rock was going to show up. Travis Scott showed up at the show. And basically, if you think about it, kind of cost Cody Rhodes the title. But this is the problem. If you really think about it, he kind of put Triple H's team in a bad spot because he said he would have adjusted things or finessed things a little bit differently. He would have done things a little bit differently. So he loved the fact that John Cena won number 17. He loved the fact that John Cena won number 17. But he didn't. But he would have done things a little bit differently. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? He would have done things a little bit differently. I don't know, man. I don't know. He would have done things a little bit differently, and he would have adjusted things a little bit more. So he's basically calling out Triple H and his team. That is exactly what he's doing. He's calling out Triple H and his team, and he's saying, bro, what you guys did was so stupid. Literally went live on the Pat McAfee Show and he berated publicly Triple H's team without berating them. But he realistically, if you look at it, hindsight is 2020, he put them in a bad spot. And then after that, on the Pat McAfee Show, he's like, he calls Cody Rhodes and John Cena after the Elimination Chamber, after the heel turn heard around the world. And he says that, I think the final boss work is done here. I think the final boss's work is done here. And then he says that he was watching WrestleMania at home. There's a lot to take in from here. There's a lot to take in from here, man. A lot. A lot of this stuff is honestly really surreal if you really think about it. Just ridiculous. On all fronts. First off, The Rock showing up at the Elimination Chamber was 100% an Ari Emanuel call. Definitely an Ari Emanuel call, 100%. Secondly, The Rock originally wanted to turn Cody Rhodes heel. He originally wanted to turn Cody Rhodes heel. He was trying to stick his beacon, as Johnny Sack would tell Tony Soprano. I don't stick my beacon, but in reality, the Rock is trying to stick his beacon. He was trying to stick his beacon and trying to interfere with Triple H's plans. Just like he did last year. This is not the first time that The Rock comes in last minute and adjusts everything. Because if you guys don't remember, the original plan was Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. But then The Rock shows up and he's like, the main event is not going to be Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, even though Cody Rhodes won the Royal Rumble. No, it's going to be The Rock versus Roman Reigns. And everybody was pissed off. As I was too. As I was. And then all of a sudden, boom. The backlash started and they pivoted and it formed the final boss, which ended up being one of the best builds to any WrestleMania that we've ever seen. Fast forward, we had The Rock coming in and, wanting Cody's soul, because originally it was supposed to be Cody turning heel, but they didn't do that. Thank God, because that would have been a horrible move. It would have been the equivalent of WWF turning Stone Cold heel back at WrestleMania 17, back in 2001. That was horrible as well. That was bad. Because, again, it was in the middle of his babyface run. Well, granted, Austin did come back from an injury back in 2000 because he was out for the majority of 2000. But you get my point. Austin was still the biggest star in the business. And they turned him heel when fans still loved him. Why do you want to turn Cody heel when he's in the middle of his babyface run as the world champion? It makes no sense. Granted, I do think Cody Rhodes would be a great heel, but right now is not the time, and thank God WWE did not do that. Thank God Triple H went there and he was like, no, we're not doing that. Instead, let's have John Cena turn heel, which was the best move that they could possibly make. But the biggest issue with this was they turned John Cena heel and they had John Cena join The Rock. They had John Cena join The Rock. That was the problem right there. And everybody expected, oh my God, John Cena's with The Rock. What is going to happen now? What is going to happen now? And everybody was watching this main event. As soon as Travis Scott came out, everybody assumed that The Rock was going to show up. But he did not. Why was that? Why did The Rock not show up? He was at home. He calls John Cena and Cody Rhodes after the Elimination Chamber. And he's like, I guess the final boss's work here is done. No, it's not. It's just starting. What are you talking about? The biggest thing that I can take away from this whole situation, and there's a lot of things that I could definitely take away from this whole scenario, is number one, even though The Rock is a board member, he is the top board member at TKO. The Rock does not want to commit to anything. He's not committed to one thing. If he does one thing, he just leaves everybody else in the trenches. And that is exactly what he did in this scenario. He left Triple H's team in the trenches. And as soon as John Cena turned heel, did that whole angle with The Rock and Travis Scott, he tells Triple H, do it yourself. I don't want to be involved with this anymore. That is exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened. I don't care what anybody says. There's some sort of power struggle going on in the WWE, man. Come on. The Rock is not committed to anything. The Rock does things, and a lot of people have been noticing this. The Rock, every time he's stuck his nose into the creative process, it has most of the time been last minute. Or it has been at the worst possible time. The Rock not showing up at WrestleMania literally 100% ruined that main event. Ruined the main event for a lot of people. And rightfully. And look, I agree. The Rock showing up definitely affected a lot of people's perception of that main event. 100%. But the more important thing is what does this show? What does this show? It shows that there is a power struggle between The Rock and his team and Triple H and his team. There is some sort of power struggle going on. There was a lot of rumors going on about The Rock and, Triple H, not really liking each other when they were wrestlers years prior. Apparently Triple H was jealous of The Rock and his stardom and his Hollywood status, all that stuff. There's a lot of stories about that and a lot of rumors about that. I don't know how true that is, but it's very apparent about, the tensions between The Rock and Triple H. A lot of people are also even making the theory that potentially a lot of this sabotaging, quote unquote, that is being done is to really push Triple H and his team out of the WWE. A lot of people are creating that theory. And it's not far-fetched when a lot of people are saying that. It really isn't. A part of me really believes that as well. A part of me really believes it because this is not the first time situations like this have happened. We saw this play out front and center last year. We saw it play out front and center last year. We did. 100%. The Rock, The Rock wants, he shows up, he returns, and he's like, should I say hi to the fans, or should I say hi at the head of the table? And then The Rock, once he said it at the head of the table, everybody was like, oh my God, is The Rock going to fight Roman at WrestleMania? Meanwhile, Cody wins the Rumble, and we already know, assumingly, what the main event of WrestleMania 40 was going to be. All of a sudden, Cody Rhodes on SmackDown shows up, and you can tell the look on Cody Rhodes' face. He's like upset. And he shows up and he tells Roman, I want to wrestle you, but not at WrestleMania. And the moment he said not at WrestleMania, that's when the fan backlash started, and rightfully so. The Rock was actively trying to sabotage that main event. Could this be a scenario from what we have seen with The Rock not showing up at WrestleMania, actively deciding not to go to WrestleMania, not to go to Vegas? And he flat out stated that I watched WrestleMania at home. Could this be a scenario where The Rock is trying to sabotage Triple H's creative process? I think so. I think him not showing up at WrestleMania did more damage to that main event than anything. Because everybody wanted to know a reason as to why John Cena joined up with The Rock. Everybody knows John Cena turned heel, but more importantly, John Cena joined The Rock. We got none of that. We got no answers. Nothing. Nada. So why did John Cena join The Rock? We got no answer to that. We got no answer to that whatsoever. Ridiculous. And now The Rock is saying, oh yeah, the final boss's work here is done. What? That makes no sense whatsoever. Now, what do I think is going to be happening in the next couple years? Because I assume situations like this are going to continue to happen. Situations like this are going to continue to happen. I don't care what anybody says. Situations like this are going to continue to happen. They're going to continue to happen. People are saying this is actively them trying to push Triple H away from the WWE. I definitely do see that being the case. If you want to hear another theory, if Triple H eventually steps down as the head of creative, who do you think is going to be replacing Triple H? It's going to be The Rock and his right-hand man, Brian Gewirtz. If you guys do not know Brian Gewirtz was the head writer or one of the lead writers for WWE programming in the 2000s. He is now The Rock's right-hand man when it comes to, his direction and where he wants to go in terms of, Hollywood, all that stuff. Brian Gewirtz is The Rock's right-hand man. He's definitely going to be the lead writer if Triple H eventually steps down. But the way that things are going, man, it sounds like there's some sort of power struggle happening in the WWE, and it's not pretty at all. Not to mention, there's going to be a WWE, I think it's a docu-series or like some sort of series that's going to be happening on Netflix or going to be coming out on Netflix showing the creative process of WWE. It's going to be saying a lot once that show comes out on Netflix to see how things are being run over there, because clearly there's some sort of internal battle happening. Triple H has his vision, but clearly The Rock has his vision. And The Rock wants to do things on The Rock's timing and not on WWE's timing. And that is the biggest problem. And it's also a bad look considering The Rock is at the head of the board of TKO. I understand that The Rock has so many Hollywood obligations, but he's also the board. He's at the head of the board of TKO. He needs to be on top of this stuff as well. And clearly The Rock is just not knowing what he seems lost. Because he commits to one thing, but he doesn't stick by his word. He has John Cena join The Rock, right? The final boss. And there was no follow-up to that. Throughout the build of that whole match between Cody Rhodes and John Cena, we had no explanation whatsoever as to why John Cena joined The Rock. Everybody expected an answer at WrestleMania, and we didn't get it. I think it's clear as day that WWE had no plan whatsoever. They did not know what they were doing when it came to The Rock and John Cena. And that is the biggest takeaway that I have to give you guys when it comes to that whole situation, because clearly, WWE just had no idea at all. The Rock had no idea what he was doing. Even Triple H. This was a situation, in my opinion, in which The Rock left Triple H and his team in the trenches. He left Triple H and his team, Paul Levesque, in the trenches. And they were like, all right, I was here. I did my job. You guys figure out what you guys are going to do, because I don't want to be a part of it. That is exactly what happened over there. And to me, it's shameful and it's stupid. And it was absolutely horrible. But in terms of The Rock, Dave LaGreca went on a rampage. If you guys don't know who Dave LaGreca is, Dave LaGreca is the voice of Busted Open on Sirius XM. So he is the voice of Busted Open on Sirius XM, and he went on a rampage. He went on a rampage just going ballistic on the finish of WrestleMania, right? And The Rock replies on a clip via Busted Open's Instagram page. And this is so funny. He replies to Dave LaGreca in the clip, and he replies with this, and I quote, "Hi, Dave. The business is a complete work. Always has been, always will be. Every aspect of it, every match, every interview. Please join me, Cody, Cena, Brian, and the rest of us for our creative discussion so you can expand your perspective. Until then, stop ranting. It's not healthy, my friend. Enjoy the show. P.S. Tell Bubba I have a Grand Marinara and Hush Puppies for all of us. Beer emoji and laughing emoji." That was what The Rock replied to Dave LaGreca from Busted Open. Him saying, look, and this is another sign of a power struggle. If you guys look in the middle of that response, please join me, Cody, Cena, Brian, and the rest of us for our creative discussions. Notice how he did not mention Paul Levesque, a.k.a. Triple H. If that is not one sign that there is a power struggle, then I don't know what is. He did not mention Triple H's name at all. Oh, but it could have been in the rest of... He said in the rest of us. Yeah, but Triple H is the head of creative. Triple H is literally the head of creative. And he did not mention Paul Levesque whatsoever. So clearly there is an issue brewing between the two. And it's not looking pretty. It is not looking pretty whatsoever. So those are my thoughts on The Rock and TKO and his response on the Pat McAfee Show and WrestleMania as a whole. All right, moving on. Aleister Black showed up to the SmackDown show this past Friday, and he get into that topic, please, thank you guys, whoever's on this live stream, whether that is on the WrestleHavoc channel or on the WNN Facebook page or the WNN YouTube channel as well. Thank you guys all for joining me on this live stream. But before we get into all this craziness, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Moving on to our final topic, and then we're going to be calling it a day. WWE The WrestleHavoc Podcast from April 27th, 2025. Not bad for a first podcast. Well, I've done podcasts before, but this is the new version of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. And we are going to be live every Sunday at 8 p.m. We're going to be discussing WWE. We're going to be discussing AEW. We're going to be discussing all the ins and outs of professional wrestling right here live at 8 p.m. on the WrestleHavoc channel, on the WNN Worldwide News Network Facebook page, and on the WNN YouTube channel as well. But yeah, that was the WrestleHavoc Podcast for Sunday, April 27th, 2025. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications. Look out for more notifications right here on the WrestleHavoc channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys all in the next podcast next week. Peace.